Are you tired of looking up rendering videos that just leave you more confused? You know, the creator starts off with an easy sketch, it looks nice, gets some base colors, and then what the heck just happened? Right? You're left there, your mind is going crazy, your head is spinning, and your canvas is still blank. If only there was someone who could explain step by step everything they know when it comes to rendering. And that's why I made this rendering series. Because I know when I first started art, even now when I'm still learning, it's hard to find some good resources to learn rendering. It feels so vague. When there are specific techniques that you can actually use, even today, like this video, I'm gonna cover just why you're not improving, right? But also the techniques that you can use when rendering. And also, if you have different art styles, it's okay because this video will still help you. I'll explain how different art styles affect the render process and how the techniques can change. So let's get started. You have to have some sort of goal in mind. What actually looks good to you? Do you like painterly renders, cell shading, a mix of both, thick lines, thin lines, no lines? And you know what? It's okay if you don't know 100% just yet because, well, it took me a year of just straight drawing to really understand what I like, and then another year to actually put it into practice. So it's okay if you don't know, right? But that was with no help and no tutorials like this one. Okay, so an action step you can take right now, unless you already know, but just go onto Pinterest or any site where you can see lots of art and start taking screenshots, start saving what type of art you like seeing, and also what type of art you like making. And that second part is going to come with experience, but the first part of what render styles, what type of effects, what type of lines you like, just all of that. And you can always change your render style whenever you want. You never have to stick to one forever. I mean, just take a look. I had these like super thick lines back in the day, and then this recent piece that I'm doing right now, it has thinner lines. You know, it still has some thick lines compared to like anime thin lines, but I'm not letting myself be trapped in that one style. So let's talk about why you're struggling with rendering. I know when I first started learning how to render, and you know what, even to this day, sometimes I still get stumped on how to get my drawings from the line art to those juicy drawings that you see here. How to get it from flat colors to the fully rendered piece, because I had no idea what I wanted it to look like. Like, I knew what I wanted the drawing to look like with thumbnail sketches, but it never occurred to me that, you know, I can use those thumbnail sketches to also try different lightings, try different light sources, right? That's exactly what happened here. This piece took me hours. Just this part where you see me struggling choosing base colors, and I didn't even get started on the rendering until much later because I didn't have that planned out. And then when I did get started on the render, I was like, okay, this just looks terrible. So how did I turn it around? How did I go from this to this? And it all started with a technique that I talked about just a couple seconds ago, thumbnail sketching. But not just thumbnail sketching your composition, thumbnail sketching your lighting. Yeah, it's like a grayscale type thumbnail sketch. You can see what I'm doing here right now. I made a smaller piece of the line art, like I copied it, made it smaller, and I filled it with gray, and now I can block the lights in. This takes much less time because you're not feigning over all those tiny details. You're just trying to get the overall shapes right. This saves you a lot of time, and you could choose a lot of different light styles, and then you can see which one looks the coolest, right? I did not do that because I'm a bit lazy, but I'm going to be doing that next time. And I know someone might be thinking, well, okay, I get the fact that you can do the grayscale, but where do I actually put the light and the shadows, right? Like, you can tell me, okay, just place the light and shadows, but I don't know what that actually means. Here's your answer. So last year I was in a camera class, right? In the cold months of winter, we learned framing, composition, stuff like that, right? Because we had to make our own short films. But the most important thing we learned in this camera class, and stick with me here, is lighting. Because every single shot you see in the movies and even in animated stuff, they have lighting, which depicts mood and all that stuff. So me and my group were recording, right, for our final project. And our professor, who I call DRGG, he always showed up to a class with a lab coat on, said interesting stuff. But bluntly today, he just said, guys, this lighting is just wrong. The actor has dark hair, so having a dark background makes the actor blend in. And that's not the type of effect we wanted because it was an interview. We want the character to pop from the background. So he moved around the lighting. He was rustling around because he's a busy guy. And when he finished moving the lights, he put a rim light behind the character to separate their hair and their body from the background. He said something very interesting, something I'll remember anytime I do lighting and art. He said, you want to make your focal point readable, so make sure to separate them from the background. So whatever the focus of the art piece is, it should be opposite in brightness to the background. Now, of course, there are moments where you want to have it closer together, or maybe you want it to blend into the background for an effect, right? But for just straight readability, you can use things like rim lights, bounce lights, and all those type of lights to separate the background from the main subject. So if your background is black, then if your subject is white, it'll be super readable. The silhouette will be super readable, as opposed to if the background is black and then you have a dark gray with no other lights. And you can see in this drawing, I use that right here because the focus is the card that I used to summon the ice giant. You see how the focus is pretty readable, like it's the brightest there, and the things around it are a little bit darker so that it pushes you towards seeing that first. You get what I mean? So now that you understand how light should be used, here are some of my favorite rendering techniques that you can use today, right? That helps me the most. So the first is ambient occlusion, right? This shows how two objects interact, and the best example of this are actually your fingers. So take a look at my hand here. You see the dark spots in between? That happens because the crevices are too small for the lights to enter, like a lot of lights enter. So it's darker between my fingers. So in short, when things are touching, like hands, cloth, hair, then you can use, a soft airbrush, put it on multiply, and just darken up the crevices. It makes your drawing look more 3D and adds contrast too, because there's dark spots, right? As opposed to if you just have no shadow, it looks like it's all connecting into one block. But when you add the ambient occlusion, that's when the 3D form starts showing. So do me a favor, in your next piece, try to use ambient occlusion on the parts touching each other. You might not get it right the first time, but by simply knowing that technique, you're already on your way to getting to that next level. And the second one is rim light. So just like in my story I told you, rim light is when light hits the back of the object and then it creates an outline on the subject's silhouette, right? So not only does it look absolutely awesome, like sometimes you can even use it when there is no light source back there, but it helps to separate the character from the background if both of them are dark. That way you have a readable subject that people aren't trying to squint. You don't want people to have to put effort into looking at your artwork. Because if they have to put effort, they're like, all right, this guy clearly doesn't know what he's doing. I'm just gonna go on to the next one. And again, you don't have to put logic to these rim lights. If it makes the piece look better, just do it, dude. Just do it. Sometimes you don't have to, look here. You see in the Mario piece? There's no green and, okay, green is fine. But you see how I have yellow as my rim light? Okay, first of all, Mario's hand is in front of him, right? So there shouldn't be any light back there. but it looks so cool that I just had to include it. Okay, this one is something I've recently learned, and it's something very important. This is like one of the foundations of rendering, and it's material separation. So what that means is that when you're rendering, you don't just put light, shadows, cool colors, but you render according to the material. So if we're rendering metal, it's shiny, reflective, so we render with more reflections. We put brighter lights, darker shadows. We make it reflect the environment. And then cloth is much softer. It's surrounded by softer shadows, highlights, and it doesn't reflect the atmosphere, the environment, as much as metal. And wood is wood, so make it look like wood. And how you make it look like wood is, you can have those crevices, you have those little textures. Wood doesn't really reflect light as hard as metal, right? It reflects light more like cloth. It's much softer. It has deeper shadows though, because wood is more 3D. Like cloth, obviously, they're all 3D, but wood has those crevices that go up and then back in and then up and in and all that stuff. So how you understand, okay, then let's say we don't understand what the material looks like when we render, right? That's where references come in. So, and tutorials on the rendering material too. Like during this piece, I watched metal and wood rendering tutorials. And although, my rendering wasn't perfect here on these materials, at least it shows some sense of separation and variety, which is always good to have in your artworks. Okay, so here's a quick bonus tip. Take a look at this ice, right? Take a look how I used the shadows and the highlights to create some form, some 3D form here, when before it was pretty flat, right? So how you do this is, at least for ice and for cloth, I'm still working on, making other things look 3D. Even here, this is pretty good for 3D. What I do is the parts of the material that are up. So like you can see this is down, this is up. The parts of the material that are up are brighter because they're getting hit by this light source more. And most of the times, like even here, you can see the parts that are brightest, which is the middle here. That's where it's the highest. That's the highest point of the material. And then it goes back down and then up and then back down. You see how that works? So here, the ice is like this crevice here is this is the top. And then it starts going down. And here, because this is blocking this, that's where I put my shadows. And then here is just like an in-between between the shadow and the highlight. So it was just my base color here actually before. So I had my base color here. Because we can't see the bottom here, that's not the perspective we have. The perspective we have is we're looking up, so we can only see the crevices here that are pointing down. We can't see this crevice that is pointing up, right? So I did that once, and then I just copied that pattern all throughout here. Like you can see again, this top is higher. In between the top, I have the shadow because the top is getting blocked. The shadows here happen because the top is blocking this light. And then here, the top let goes, like can't block the light anymore. So the light comes through here, but since it's not as close as the top, the light is dimmer. And then here, it's just darker here. It's just, I didn't want people to really look here too much. So that's why I darkened it. And even take a look here, right? So this cloth, obviously I could do better. I know I could do better. But this sort of fur, the tops here, so this bright part is what is closest in volume, like it's the highest. Again, same with here, especially here. I did a pretty good job on these clothes. Like, let's take a look here. You see this? This top part here, brighter, and it makes it look like these clothes are folding downwards. See that? Bright folds down into that. Bright folds down into here. Again, right here, folds down. Now, of course, your line work will influence how convincing this looks, but just in terms of rendering, again, bright, and now it makes it look like this went down and this went down. So that's all you have to do. So now that you understand a little bit more about rendering, this is the first episode of, I'm thinking, making 10. If you guys do have any other rendering related problems that you do want me to cover, please make sure to comment it down below. And if I missed something, make sure to tell me. I'll cover it in my next video, right? So I have I'll give you guys a little quick preview. I have an Inside the Mind video coming up for this piece and a couple other pieces as well. And I'm working on a free rendering workbook that I'm writing right now. So stick around, make sure to subscribe if you want that workbook at the end of the series. Thanks for watching, and as always, take action.